A single father, still carrying the ashes of a love stolen from him, meets a pregnant woman at a farmer's market. Their hands touch over a fallen peach, and something inside him shifts for the first time in 14 months. He falls for her. His little girl falls for her. He starts dreaming again, building a crib, whispering plans for a future he never thought he'd have. But hidden inside a stack of papers on her kitchen counter is a name. One name. The same name printed on the police report that destroyed his entire world. The father of her unborn baby is the same man who killed his wife. And nothing, not love, not hope, not even the truth, will leave him the same after this moment. Before we continue, please tell us where in the world are you watching from. We love seeing how far our stories reach.
Callum Henley's hands were shaking. Not the kind of shaking that comes from cold or exhaustion. This was something deeper, something that started behind his ribs and radiated outward until even his fingertips trembled against the edge of Noel Ashford's kitchen counter. The court document was still in his hand. The paper felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. He read the name again, then once more, then one final time, slowly, letter by letter, because some part of his brain refused to accept what his eyes were telling him. Kieran Hollis. The same Kieran Hollis whose blood alcohol level was 3 times the legal limit on the night of November 14th, 2 years ago. The same Kieran Hollis who crossed the center median on a 2-lane highway outside Beaufort, South Carolina, and slammed head-on into a silver sedan driven by a 31-year-old woman named Simone Henley. His wife, the mother of his daughter, the woman they buried on a Tuesday while their 4-year-old girl, Wren, held a stuffed rabbit and asked when Mommy was coming back from her nap. Callum lowered himself to the kitchen floor, his back pressed against the cabinet. The paper rested on his knee, and for a long time he just sat there, breathing in, breathing out, while the life he had been carefully, cautiously rebuilding crumbled around him like wet sand. From the bedroom down the hall, he could hear Noelle humming softly. She was resting on her side, one hand draped over her belly, over the baby that Wren had already named My Friend, over the baby whose father had taken everything from him. He closed his eyes, and the memories hit him like a wave. 14 months earlier, Callum was a man made entirely of routine. Wake up at 6, pack Wren's lunch, drop her at preschool, drive to his work at the marine repair yard on the coast, pick Wren up at 4, cook dinner, read her a story, fall asleep on the couch with the television on because the silence of the bedroom was unbearable. He didn't date. He didn't want to. Friends told him it was time. His mother told him Simone would have wanted him to find happiness again. But Callum couldn't imagine holding someone else's hand without feeling like he was letting go of Simone's. Then came the farmer's market. It was a Saturday morning in January, bright, cool, the kind of winter day the South Carolina coast does best. Wren had been tugging his arm toward a table selling homemade lemonade. He was smiling, a real smile, the kind that had become rare, when he heard a small gasp behind him. He turned around.
A woman, visibly pregnant, maybe 7 months along, was kneeling awkwardly on the pavement, trying to gather a spilled paper bag of peaches that had rolled in every direction. One had gone under a nearby table. Another was heading toward the curb. She was reaching for them with one hand while balancing herself with the other, and there was something in her expression, not pain, but a quiet, exhausted embarrassment that made Callum move before he even thought about it. He crouched down beside her and started picking up peaches. Their hands met over the last one at the same moment. She looked up. Her eyes were dark brown, slightly damp, and when she realized a stranger had just knelt on the ground to help her collect fruit, she let out a small, breathy laugh that caught him completely off guard.
"I had them," she said. "I definitely had them." "You definitely did not," he replied. She laughed again, and Callum felt something crack open in his chest, not painfully, but gently, the way dawn cracks open a dark sky. Her name was Noelle Ashford. She was 29. She had moved to Beaufort a few months earlier. She was alone, clearly. She didn't mention a partner. She didn't mention anyone. She was just a woman with a bag of rescued peaches and a belly full of new life, standing in the morning light, smiling like someone who had almost forgotten how. Callum handed her the bag. "I'm Callum," he said. "Noelle," she answered. Wren appeared between them, lemonade dripping down her chin, and pointed at Noelle's belly. "Is there a baby in there?" Noelle blinked, then smiled. "There is." "What's its name?" "I don't know yet." Wren considered this seriously. "You should pick a good one." Noelle looked at Callum. He looked at her. And something passed between them, something neither of them was brave enough to name yet. If this story is already pulling at your heart, take a moment to subscribe, because it's about to go somewhere you won't expect.
The first real conversation happened 3 days later at a cafe near the harbor. Noelle ordered chamomile tea. Callum ordered black coffee. They sat by the window and talked for 2 hours. Not about anything heavy at first. She told him about her work as a freelance illustrator, children's books mostly. She showed him sketches on her phone, tiny animals with big eyes, forests with hidden doors, worlds built for wonder. He told her about the repair yard, about Wren's obsession with seashells, about how he once burned spaghetti so badly the smoke alarm woke the entire neighborhood. She laughed, he laughed, and somewhere in the middle of that laughter, the walls between them started thinning. It wasn't until their third meeting, a walk along the waterfront, Wren running ahead of them, collecting shells, that Noelle mentioned the father of her baby. She didn't say his name. She simply said the relationship had been destructive, that she had stayed too long because she believed she could help someone who didn't want to be helped, that by the time she found out she was pregnant, she had already decided to leave. "He made choices," she said quietly, watching the water. "Dangerous ones. I couldn't be part of that world, and I couldn't bring a child into it." Callum didn't press. He understood what it felt like to carry a story you weren't ready to tell in full. "You're brave," he said simply. She shook her head. "I'm terrified." "Those are the same thing," he answered. She looked at him, and for a moment her eyes searched his face as if she were trying to decide whether to trust the softness she found there. She did. The weeks that followed were the closest thing to healing Callum had felt since Simone's death. He brought Noelle soup when she was too tired to cook. She drew a portrait of Wren surrounded by seashells and framed it for her bedroom. Wren started asking every morning, "Are we seeing Noelle today?" And each time Callum's heart ached in the best possible way. One evening in late February, they sat on her porch. Fireflies blinked across the yard. Wren had fallen asleep inside on the couch, wrapped in a blanket. Noelle was resting her head against the back of the chair, eyes half closed, when Callum spoke. "I didn't think I'd feel this again." She turned to look at him. "Feel what?" He paused. The word sat heavy on his tongue, not because it was difficult, but because it was sacred. He hadn't used it since Simone. He hadn't even whispered it in the dark. "Love," he said. Noelle's eyes filled. A tear slipped down her cheek, and she wiped it quickly, like she was ashamed of it. "You don't have to say it back," he added quietly. "I want to say it back," she whispered. "I've wanted to say it for weeks. I just didn't think someone like you could want all of this." She gestured at herself, at her belly, at her small apartment, at the complicated mess of her life. He reached over and held her face gently in both hands. "This is exactly what I want." She closed her eyes and leaned into his palms. And in that moment, under the glow of a porch light and the hum of cicadas, two broken people found something whole. But life has a way of hiding its sharpest edges beneath the softest moments. It was a Thursday afternoon in mid-March. Noelle was due in 5 weeks. Callum had come over to help assemble the crib, a white wooden one she'd ordered online. The instructions were spread across the living room floor. Noelle, exhausted from a restless night, had gone to lie down. Callum worked quietly. He liked this, building something for a child. It reminded him of assembling Wren's first crib with Simone. The memory didn't sting the way it used to. It glowed, and he took that as a sign that he was finally learning how to carry grief and love at the same time. He needed more space. The kitchen counter was cluttered with mail, sketches, and a few folders. He moved a stack of papers to the side, and a document slid free, landing face up on the tile floor. He picked it up. It was a legal filing, a court case summary. Vehicular manslaughter. His eyes moved across the page casually at first, then stopped. Defendant, Kieran Hollis. Callum's blood turned to ice. He knew that name the way you know a scar on your own body. He had read it on police reports. He had heard it spoken by a prosecutor. He had whispered it into his pillow on the worst nights, when anger was the only thing keeping him from falling apart completely. Kieran Hollis, the man who had been drinking all evening at a bar 12 miles outside Beaufort, the man who got behind the wheel of his sedan and drove 70 in a 45 zone, the man who drifted across the center line and collided head-on with a silver car driven by a young woman heading home from her shift at a medical clinic, the man who killed Simone. And now, according to this document, the man listed as the biological father in Noelle's prenatal records.
Callum didn't scream. He didn't throw anything. He didn't storm into the bedroom and demand answers. He just sat down, right there on the kitchen floor, back against the cabinet, the paper on his knee. His hands, the same hands that had held Noelle's face and told her he loved her, now trembling so violently he had to press them flat against the tile. The math was simple and devastating. Noelle had said she left a dangerous man, a man who made reckless choices. She said she couldn't bring a child into that world. She hadn't been lying, she just hadn't told the whole truth. Because the man she ran from, the man whose baby she was carrying, was the same man who shattered Callum's entire existence. He sat on that floor for 20 minutes, maybe 30. Time stopped meaning anything. The crib pieces lay half-assembled in the living room. The screwdriver was still in his back pocket. Everything looked exactly the same as it had 5 minutes ago. And yet, nothing would ever look the same again. Noelle appeared in the doorway. She was rubbing her eyes, her hair loose around her shoulders. "Hey, did you find the—" She stopped. She saw him on the floor. She saw the paper, and the color drained from her face so completely that she had to grip the door frame to stay upright. "Callum? How long have you known?" His voice was flat, not angry, worse than angry. Empty. "Known what?" "Don't." The word came out quiet but sharp. "Don't do that. You know what I'm asking." Noelle lowered herself slowly into a kitchen chair. Her hands were shaking now, too. "I didn't know," she whispered. "Not at first. When we met, when I fell for you, I had no idea who Simone was. I didn't know about the accident until I looked up Kieran's case online. That was 3 weeks ago." Callum looked at her. 3 weeks. "I was going to tell you. I swear on everything I have. I was trying to find the right way." "There is no right way, Noelle." His voice cracked on her name. "There is no right way to tell someone that the baby they've been whispering to, the baby their daughter already loves, belongs to the man who killed their wife." The silence that followed was the loudest thing either of them had ever heard. Noelle was crying now, not dramatically, quietly.
The kind of crying that has no performance in it, just raw, unfiltered pain. "I love you," she said. "That part is real. Every part of it is real." "I know," he said, and that was the worst part. He believed her. He loved her too, but love wasn't the problem. The truth was the problem, and the truth had just built a wall between them that neither of them knew how to climb. Callum stood up slowly. He placed the document on the counter. He looked at Noelle one last time, at her tear-streaked face, at her belly, at the life she carried that was tangled up in the death he still mourned. Then he walked out. He picked up Wren from his mother's house. He drove home. He sat in Wren's room and watched her sleep. And in the dark, with the sound of her breathing filling the room, he let himself fall apart. Have you ever loved someone without knowing the full truth? If this story is speaking to something deep in you, leave a comment, because what happens next might surprise you.
For 8 days, Callum didn't call, didn't text, didn't drive past her apartment. He went to work, he packed lunches, he read bedtime stories. He functioned, but only on the outside. Inside, he was at war. One voice told him to walk away, to protect himself, to protect Wren, to keep Simone's memory clean and uncomplicated. Another voice, quieter, deeper, asked a question he couldn't ignore. Was Noelle responsible for what Kieran did? He knew the answer. He had always known it. She wasn't. She was another casualty of the same reckless man. She had run from Kieran the same way Simone had been running from danger that night, unknowingly, with no chance to see what was coming. On the 9th day, his mother came over for dinner. She noticed the heaviness in him and asked. He told her everything, every detail, and when he finished, she sat quietly for a long time. Then she said something that cracked him wide open. That baby didn't choose its father, just like Wren didn't choose to lose her mother. If you punish Noelle for something she didn't do, you become the kind of man Simone never would have married. Callum pressed his palms to his eyes and let out a breath that felt like it had been trapped in his lungs for over a week. He drove to Noelle's apartment that evening. She opened the door in an oversized sweater, her eyes swollen, her face pale. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. She didn't say anything. She just stood there, bracing herself, for anger, for goodbye, for whatever he had come to deliver. Callum stood on her porch, hands in his pockets, and looked at her for a long time. Then he spoke. "I went to Simone's grave yesterday. I sat there for an hour. I told her about you, about the baby, about Kieran. I told her everything." Noelle's lips trembled. "And I realized something," he continued, his voice thick. "Simone would have loved you. She would have looked at you, a woman who escaped something terrible, who chose to protect her child, who had the courage to start over, and she would have said, 'Take care of her, Callum.'" A sob broke from Noelle's chest. "I can't pretend this doesn't hurt. It does. It will for a long time. But I am not going to let Kieran Hollis take one more thing from me. He took Simone. He doesn't get to take you too." Noelle reached for him. He stepped forward and wrapped his arms around her, carefully, gently, holding her and the baby both, and they stood in the doorway while the evening light faded around them. 3 weeks later, Noelle gave birth to a healthy baby boy. She named him Oren, a name that means light. Callum was in the waiting room with Wren when the nurse came out. When they walked into the room, Wren climbed carefully onto the bed, looked down at the tiny face wrapped in a white blanket, and whispered, "Hi, friend. I've been waiting for you." Noelle looked at Callum through her tears. He looked back at her, and in that room, surrounded by the beeping of monitors and the scent of clean linen and the impossible, unearnable grace of a second chance, he understood something he had been afraid to believe.
Love doesn't erase pain. It doesn't undo loss. It doesn't make the past disappear. But sometimes, if you're brave enough to let it, love builds something new right in the middle of the wreckage. And that new thing, fragile and imperfect as it is, becomes the very reason you survive. Callum Henley had lost everything once. He wasn't going to lose everything twice. If this story reached something inside you, if it reminded you of someone who finally made you feel seen, leave a comment below. Tell me your story. I read every single one. And if you're not already part of the Soul Tales family, hit that subscribe button. We tell stories here that stay with you long after the screen goes dark. I'll see you in the next one.